From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Saini Gray. In Brazil, pre-election tensions are heating up once again, with just over 2 weeks to go to the runoff vote. Thousands of Brazilian youth marched on Thursday night against the right-wing presidential candidate Jair Bolsonaro. They say his rhetoric has encouraged an increase in violence against opponents. The protesters in Sao Paulo chanted "Ele now" or "Not him" and carried placards saying "My country is not for sale." They oppose both Bolsonaro's misogynistic and homophobic views and his neoliberal economic program of cuts and privatization.
Being LGBTI, I am afraid of his supporters beating us up. That has happened to me.
The election has divided the country amongst a population that after 4 elections is tired of a government in power and who wants radical change. This radical change is the far right. The far right defends Nazis, fascists, racists, homophobes, human rights ideals.
And a famous capoeira master has been buried in Brazil after he was killed by supporters of Jair Bolsonaro. Maudo Katende was stabbed to death after he expressed his support for the Workers' Party candidate, Fernando Haddad. One man was arrested in connection with his murder. Several artists denounced the murder and other acts of violence apparently carried out by supporters of the far-right candidate.
We cannot reduce Brazil to this barbaric thing. The murder of Maudo Katende is a sign that one shouldn't forcefully follow in the way that other people blindly think. It is backwards. It is fear of responsibility in civilization.
A world-famous artist has joined the "LA Now" or "Not Him" protest against Jair Bolsonaro, first launched by Brazilian women. Roger Waters, the co-founder of the rock band Pink Floyd, projected the words "LA Now" during his concert in Sao Paulo. Waters is the latest of a string of artists who have joined the social media campaign against the far-right presidential candidate. Earlier, local pop singers Anita and Daniela Mercury also supported the movement. The Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad has attended a mass for peace in the Sao Paulo suburb of Jardim Angela. The neighborhood was once known as the most violent in the world. Our correspondent Ignacio Limas was there.
We are in the Church of the Martyr Saints in the Sao Paulo neighborhood of Jardim Angela. Fernando Haddad, the candidate of the Workers' Party in the runoff election on October 28th, is here. We should explain that in the latest opinion polls, there was a difference of 6% between Jair Bolsonaro and Fernando Haddad among Catholic voters, and a difference of 40% among evangelicals. This is a clear illustration of how evangelical leaders are backing Bolsonaro. Haddad is taking part in this mass on the day of Our Lady of the Aparecida, which is also dedicated to Brazilian youth and the educational policies developed by the PT governments. Haddad is himself a teacher, of course, and was Minister of Education in the governments of both Lula da Silva and Dilma Rousseff. Yesterday, the candidate of the right met businessmen in Rio de Janeiro and told them he will not continue demarcating indigenous lands, that this will be put up for sale. And this on the eve of the 12th of October, a very important day in Latin America, as the Day of Indigenous Resistance. So this is the situation with just 2 weeks to go until the second round. A clear polarization between two projects, one that proposes extending democratic and social rights in Brazil, and another that has produced violence in the streets, and which has been marked by Jair Bolsonaro's absence from the televised debates. Yesterday, we should have had the first debate before the runoff, but it didn't happen, because Jair Bolsonaro didn't turn up, supposedly on medical advice. However, he did go to that meeting with businessmen in Rio. This has been condemned by many people, including Fernando Haddad, as an attempt by Bolsonaro to avoid having to defend his neoliberal economic program. So we'll continue following Fernando Haddad's activities here in one of the most vulnerable communities of Sao Paulo.
For many indigenous peoples in Latin America and the Caribbean, the 12th of October is a day of resistance. For them, there is no reason to celebrate the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492. Our correspondent in Panama reports.
This camp is still resisting the Barro Blanco hydroelectric project, a struggle that represents the abuses suffered by the indigenous peoples of the Panamanian Isthmus.
They have violated our rights with this project. We want our peoples to be free. We want our children to have the right to live well. And with this, it is not possible. We want to be respected and be treated like people.
In addition to the hydroelectric projects, the more than 7 indigenous peoples of this country also condemn labor exploitation and other abuses.
We emphasize that our rights have been violated. The right to childhood, the right to family. All those rights have been brutally violated for our Ngave people.
The rate of poverty among the indigenous communities in Panama is as high as 98%, in addition to high levels of malnutrition and disease. For these peoples, their rights continue to be constrained.
For us, it should not be celebrated, because we will be celebrating the spilling of innocent people's blood, who lived in a free and peaceful America. Before 1492, our people existed, so there was nothing to discover. It is a fallacy to speak of a celebration when there must be mourning because innocent Ngave Bugle people died.
If the problems continue, these communities warn that they are willing to die to defend their rights and their dignity.
And the indigenous in Venezuela are celebrating the Day of Indigenous Resistance, honoring indigenous culture and their resistance to the arrival of colonial powers. Originally seen as a celebration of Hispanic influence in the Americas, Venezuela changed the title from the Day of the Race to the current one in 2002. It was a counter to Columbus Day that celebrates the arrival of Spanish colonialists. Today, the day is a symbol of nationalist activism across the continent. Police in Zimbabwe have beaten and arrested scores of union leaders and activists ahead of a planned protest against the economic crisis. Among those detained is the president of the country's largest trade union, Peter Mutasa, from the ZCTU. Mutasa had called for a protest in Harare on Thursday, despite a ban on gatherings due to an outbreak of cholera. Unions have been angered by rising prices and shortages of basic daily items from bread to medicine and fuel. Landslides in Uganda have killed at least 40 people, and the death toll is expected to rise. The landslides were triggered after a river burst its banks following heavy rainfall in the Bududa district. Rescue teams are on the ground, but they are struggling to access some of the affected areas as it's still very dangerous. And the former South African Foreign Minister, Pik Botha, who was a key figure during the transition from the apartheid era, has died at the age of 86. He became the global face of the country's white minority government in the last years of apartheid until its end in 1994. He then served as the Minister of Energy under the presidency of Nelson Mandela. According to his son, Botha died at home after an illness.
Temporary arrest.
The Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has accused the United States of ordering the Colombian government to assassinate him.
You know that, don't you? They have given the order from the White House to kill Maduro. Not a hair will touch me because God protects me and protects the people of Venezuela. And they have given the oligarchy of Bogota the task of killing me.
The president was speaking at the closing ceremony of the Workers' Congress, where trade unions and workers from various sectors presented proposals to help boost the economy.
I come to ask workers that all these proposals help inform that 2025 homeland plan for the working class and keep it alive. Once and for all, brothers and sisters, I believe that these guidelines hold the power of positive transformation, and the homeland plan must contain at least 3 components from the working class. Economic transformation is a priority.
We'll take a short break now and we'll have more news in a minute.
Telesur Documentaries presents an emblematic voyage.
Cuando llegó acá era Ernesto, que ahora es la Serra.
The journey when Ernesto became Che. Sunday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Peru is marking 50 years since the revolution that gave rise to the nationalist government of Juan Velasco Alvarado. More on the importance of that event in this report.
Over the months of October, trade unions, social and campesino movements commemorate the social, political and economic reforms that began in 1968 with the government of General Juan Velasco Alvarado.
I have found here children of campesinos who are professionals now. That wouldn't have been possible without Velasco. So there is a new generation with children and grandchildren who are the product of that liberation, and who are now free. Without Velasco, they would still be enslaved under the hacienda system.
Velasco's government adopted a new approach to development in Peru. One of its main legacies was agrarian reform. It expropriated the land of a small group of big landowners and gave it to the campesinos to work.
Campesinos before the agrarian reform were exploited. They were slaves who had to work for almost nothing. Their bosses gave them just a place to sleep in exchange of their work.
Among Velasco's other emblematic measures was the nationalization of the La Brea and Barinas petroleum complex, run by the American International Petroleum Company without paying any taxes. He also took over mining, fishing and other resources. According to political leader Victor Oliva, Peru didn't have sovereignty over its strategic resources before Velasco.
Our country's resources were being progressively handed over to the insatiable appetite of North American transnationals. There was also the military presence, with military bases and other institutions that went under a variety of names, like the Summer Linguistic Institute, which was an NGO that basically worked as spies.
50 years after the nationalist revolution, social movements, campesinos and intellectuals consider Peru has gone backwards in social and economic matters. They say it has returned to the exploitation of workers and the privatization of resources and strategic goods.
In Chile, hundreds of students continue to march against the Safe Classroom bill promoted by President Sebastián Piñera. Protesters say the proposed law seeks to expel all students who raise their voices against the government. They see it as a copy of laws used by the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. Although the Senate has described the bill as unconstitutional, President Piñera is vowing to move forward with his proposal even without support.
We want to say in a strong and clear voice that we will not allow this law to be passed, and we will go to the street to reject it whenever it is necessary, because it generates own integration, repression, and beating the critical thinking of the classroom.
Colombian farmers are supporting the national program for the substitution of illicit crops. However, it seems that the implementation of the program could be at risk.
Close to 80,000 families, part of the integral national program of substitution of illicit crops, are facing uncertainty. They say the government of Iván Duque hasn't paid attention to the program.
With
the previous government, we discussed about the volunteer eradication of illicit crops by implementing the program in different departments and municipalities of the country. Since then, we have been in standby. We haven't had any conversation with the new government.
Former President Juan Manuel Santos said that the budget for this program was approved, but reality seems to be other.
For
2019, we need a budget of 2.5 billion Colombian pesos, but the government is assigning a small budget for this and also for the integral agricultural reform. We will need an additional amount for a land fund, but it is not planned yet.
Experts say the success of the substitution program is based on the amount of public funds. According to analyst Juan Carlos Garzón, it is difficult that this government will change their way of fighting drug trafficking.
In Colombia, people talk about drug policies, but the country does not really have one. We have a bunch of tools used independently. It will be a real challenge to create policies that work in the coming years.
Meanwhile, social organizations have reported 43 leaders working on the substitution of illicit crops program have been killed.
At least 12 people have died in landslides in the center of Colombia. Another 4 have been injured in the Marquetalia municipality. The landslides were caused by heavy rains that have affected the area for the past 3 weeks. We head to Mexico, where people are protesting against the eviction of several traditional restaurants from a historic building. It's been bought by developers who want to turn it over to fast food outlets. Our correspondent in Mexico City, Pablo Perez, tells us more.
We're standing in front of the emblematic sandwich factory named Tortas Robles in downtown Mexico City. This eatery has been serving Mexican tortas to the citizens of downtown Mexico City for over 70 years. They're gonna lose their job very soon, along with the workers of the Café Trevi and El Café del Medio. Those are traditional downtown eateries that have been serving the people of Mexico for a long time, but a bank-owned company bought the building, and they're gonna evict them soon to build a co-working center, and they're gonna substitute the traditional restaurants with international chain fast food companies. So that's why citizens of Mexico City are demonstrating today against what they call a corruption between the building companies and the Mexico City's government that is allowing these evictions to be carried away, but also the erasure, the erasing of Mexico City's history, well, and they say it's just for profit.
The chair of the Group of 20, or G20, is expressing concern about trade tensions brewing among countries. Nicolas de Jovne, who's also Argentina's Treasury Minister, says the differences that persist must be resolved by members directly involved. He made the appeal at the IMF and World Bank annual meeting in Bali. And the Dominican Republic and the European Union have strengthened ties during a meeting in Santo Domingo. Dominican Foreign Minister Miguel Vargas and the Latin American and Caribbean External Action Director Hugo Sobral presided over the forum. They stressed the relevance of cooperation between the two regions. During the meeting, they examined topics such as a human rights plan, political parties, law, and fund negotiations. The Guadeloupean writer Maurice Condé has won the New Academy Prize in Literature. The award was set up as an alternative in protest at the scandal over sexual abuse in the Nobel Prize for Literature. Swedish librarians nominated 47 authors, who were then voted on by nearly 33,000 people from around the world. Condé won the award worth about $113,000 US for her writing about Guadeloupe. She says the Caribbean island is only mentioned when there are hurricanes or earthquakes. The Nobel Prize in Literature was postponed for 2018 after a man affiliated with the Swedish Academy was jailed for rape.
In her works, she describes in a precise and overwhelming language the ravage of colonialism and the chaos of post-colonialism.
And Colombia has recovered 38 ancient artifacts. The pre-Columbian ceramic pottery was taken over a decade ago by a private collector in the United States. The FBI recovered the artifacts which were illegally exported. The Colombian Institute of Anthropology and History will try to identify the pieces. Time for another very short break. World News is next.
In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. A Turkish court has freed the U.S. pastor Andrew Brunson, who is on trial for terror-related offenses. Hours after the verdict, he left for the United States. The court sentenced him to 3 years in jail, but said he wouldn't have to spend any more time in custody because he has already served the time. He had been in a Turkish jail since October 2016. Ankara and Washington had been engaged in a diplomatic war of words over the evangelical pastor. The death toll from Hurricane Michael in the United States has reached 13. Rescuers are still searching for survivors in Florida. Dubbed as the third most powerful storm ever to hit the country, it left a trail of destruction in Virginia and North Carolina. Over 1 million houses and businesses are without electricity. Major flooding and tornadoes have also swept the area. Although Michael has been downgraded to a tropical storm, the National Weather Service warns that floodwaters are extremely dangerous. North and South Korea are to hold high-level talks on Monday at the border village of Panmunjom. The latest talks will be led by South Unification's minister. This is a follow-up to the recent summit between the two leaders, Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. Next week's talks will discuss ways to finalize and implement the Pyongyang Agreement, including resuming economic cooperation. And now let's take a look at what else is happening around the world.
Hundreds of mourners have gathered to pay respect to the Bulgarian TV journalist Victoria Marinova at her funeral. She was raped and murdered Saturday in the Bulgarian town of Rus. German authorities are set to extradite a 20-year-old Bulgarian suspect. Severin Krashimirov, who admitted to have hit a woman and throwing her into a bush under the influence of alcohol and drugs, is expected to be on trial within 10 days. Afghanistan is set to deploy biometric verification machines for the first time in the elections to curb voting fraud. In the capital, Kabul, where a fifth of the population lives, authorities want to avoid people to vote more than once. It was a last-minute decision to try to distribute the devices to more than 5,000 polling stations, and critics fear they will fail to work or won't arrive in time.
The votes will not be valid from our Commission's perspective, and any ballot paper which does not contain biometrics sticker number, the Commission will not accept those papers.
A high-speed train with 510 passengers had caught on fire in Germany. But no injuries have been reported. At least 2 train cars caught on fire early morning en route between Cologne and Munich, but all passengers managed to leave unharmed. The cause of the fire is not yet known.
Thousands of anti-independence demonstrators have marched for unity in Barcelona on Spain's National Day. According to local police, around 35,000 people demonstrated, chanting pro-unity slogans and waving Spanish flags. The march took place just a year after Catalonia's failed declaration of independence. Polls show Catalonians favoring and opposing separation are almost evenly divided. India is having its Me Too moment as a number of women are accusing Bollywood actors and directors of sexual harassment. The movement gained steam after the Bollywood actress Tanushree Dutta recently accused a co-actor of harassing her on the set of a movie 10 years ago. Following that allegation, many female journalists have started to share their experiences of sexual abuse in the media. Now the government has issued a statement saying it has a zero-tolerance policy towards sexual crimes. And Chinese researchers have made a breakthrough by breeding 29 healthy mice with same-sex parents using gene editing. Offspring with 2 mothers survived and went on to have babies of their own, while mice from 2 fathers were carried to full term for the first time, but they only survived for a few days. Now, some reptiles, amphibians, and fish can reproduce from a single parent of the same sex, but for mammals, researchers had to use stem cells and gene editing. And we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyeartv.net/English. And for our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on StarStat channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you for watching.
Telesur Documentaries presents an emblematic voyage.
Cuando llegó acá era Ernesto, que ahora es la Serra.
The journey when Ernesto became Che. Sunday, only on Telesur.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on culture, innovation, conservation, human well-being. Keep up to date on the latest innovations in science and technology with Atomun. The habits and knowledge you need to live a healthy lifestyle are on Guide Your Body. Environmental consciousness is required to preserve our Earth. Undergo your transformation on Green Zone. All about equity, diversity, and respect for identities on By Gender. Cultural manifestations, the art in all its forms, and the stories of real lives. Every day we feature a wide variety of content, only on Telesur, the news source from Latin America and the Caribbean.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.